night when it gets dark. So the night when it is covered with darkness. Ma wadda'aka rabbuka wa ma qala. So Allah was saying that He has not forsaken him. That is the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and He has not become displeased with him. Ma wadda'aka rabbuka wa ma qala. He has not forsaken him, and he is not being displeased with him. وَلَلْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لَكَ مِنَ الْأُولَى. So Allah was reassuring the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that surely what is going to come after is going to be better than what has preceded. So, وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْتِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. So, and that verse is saying, and soon your Lord will give you what you will be pleased with. So, and soon your Lord will give you that which you will be pleased with. Alam yajidka yatiman fa'awa. So, as the kind of affirmation, Allah makes a site an example that He found you as an orphan. Alam yajidka yatiman. So Allah found you. So Allah found you as an orphan and made you and give you a shelter for our give you a shelter. Or fahada, which translates to we found you lost and we guided you to the right path. So we found you poor and we gave you from our bounties. We enriched you. So we found you poor and we enriched you. Therefore, as for the orphan, do not oppress. These are the verses where Allah was commanding him on what to do and what not to do. So, as for the orphans, do not oppress. For those who are, that's the sa'il, do not despise them, do not chide them. So, and for the favor of your Lord, announce it. So whenever Allah has bestowed His favor upon you, you should make it known. You should express it in the right manner. So these verses, the translations of the verses that has just been recited to us, and I hope we're able to take some lessons from it. So one of which is a part where Allah was trying to reaffirm, to console the prophet and make him know that what is to come is definitely going to be better than what has preceded. So for that reason, he should be patient and perseverant. And also, we are able to take some lessons from it such that we're able to know that for orphans, we should not oppress them. For those who ask, we should try as much as possible in our capability to give. And for whatever Allah has done for us, we should be able to express it. So we pray Almighty Allah make it understandable beyond how I've said it. Assalamu alaikum.
Amen. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakumullahu khairan for that. Time is fast spent, so we are going to be moving on to the main reason why we are here today. The first to talk to us on the psychological impact of Japa sustaining and preparing to live abroad is our first speaker. The name of our first speaker is Dr. Itopa Garba, MBBS, MPH, FCWAP, Psych, and ICAP1. Is a consultant psychiatrist. At the Hospital Management, Mina, Niger State. A visiting consultant and AG Ed at the Mental Health Unit, FMC Jabi, Abuja. So, Dr. Itopa Garba, it's a pleasure to have you on this call.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for calling me with the opportunity to share a little bit of what I know on this topic with this congregation.
That's one. Right. Yes, one. Yes, one.
Hello?
Please kindly mute yourself if you are not the one talking. Thank you.
Walaikum assalam. Bọ́ọ̀lù àwọn bẹ́ẹ̀ tiẹ̀ wá. Àti ń gbọ́. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam. We can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, good. Just a minute. I'm trying to see if I can share my screen so that I'll not take. Hello. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam wa
Alaikum salam. We are
rahmatullahi. We
here
can
with
hear
you.
you.
Okay, yes, I was trying to see if I could share my screen, but apparently that's not working. So,
Okay.
but I will just
Let's
I'll just
I
start
don't
off.
know. Can you send the slide?
Yes, I already sent it to Haji.
Yeah, yeah.
So I
Maybe
think
we check
Yes,
and
let me
check
forward
it.
it.
Maybe you can send the slide.
okay. Let me just start off so that I know time has long been spent. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh all. Yes, I've been saddled with the responsibility of talking about the psychological impact of Japa. Yeah, it's a very interesting topic as it were, since it seems to be what is prevailing in our society today. And I'm sure every one of us either have already jackpot or are planning to, or entertaining the thoughts of doing that. And as enticing as this event might look, it comes with its own negative connotation, especially for those who are not well prepared to undertake that journey, because it's actually a life event, really. And life events have also all have been noted to come with a psychological implication. Okay, so I have an outline here. I'm sure maybe when Haji has distributed, you'll see it. I'm going to talk about, first I'll try a definition of the word Japa. Then I'll look at the types of Japa. These are all of my own making. Then of course we'll look at the causes. Then we'll discuss briefly the general impact of Japa. Then of course we'll now look properly into the psychological impact of this phenomenon. Then of course we'll look at how do we mitigate the impact of Japa. Okay, so by way of definition, Japa is a Yoruba word that means to run, flee, or escape. It means also the mass emigration of Nigerian youths for better economic opportunities, mainly in the global north. However, this activity or emigration is not limited to the global north. It's been known that people jump out to other countries, even other African countries, as long as they do not remain within the country. Can you hear me? Am I on?
Yes, you are. Yes, you
Oh, okay, mashallah. All right. So, generally, it connotes the emigration of from one's own country of residence to another to seek for a better life. So, I try to make some form of a categorization or typing of the forms of Japa. Of course, some of them may appear funny as the case may be, but then it is what it is. So when I identified one I can call obligatory Japa, that is, one has found one's in a position where you have no other option than to just to leave the country. Of course, a number of factors might be responsible to this. In fact, this one is similar to to a hijra, because now you find yourself in a situation whereby you just do not know how to continue surviving in your current environment, and you feel the best way for you to sustain your own psychological health is just to emigrate. Okay, then of course there is the one that people do as a means of furthering their education. So I call that one educational japa. Of course, many people use this pedestal as a stepping stone to actually actualizing their permanent japa plans. Okay, so then of course there's work-based japa. You get an employment outside the country and you move. Okay, then of course there is japa that might be precipitated by a fear of insecurity. Many people in the northern part of the country today, if they are not in the capital Abuja, or if they are not internally displaced and living in other parts of the country, you realize that majority of them just want to move out of the country completely because of the rising incidences of insecurity, especially banditry and kidnapping. The state where I practice is a major daily reality which we all have to contend with. Okay, so of course I have also tried to identify Japa as a status symbol. You Japa because you have the ability to, you have the money and the financial muscle to, so you go and start living abroad simply because yes, you have the money to do that. Then of course, there is the one I put as okay. There is the one I missed out earlier. The one I called follow Japa. You are Japaing because your friend has done so. You have a number of people who have done so, and you decide to follow them and do the same as long as it's work. I mean, as you are able to. Then of course the final point is Japa for Japa's sake. It's similar to the one I just described, but it's a little bit different. Okay, because one is a passive sorry, one is an active event because everybody is doing it. I'm doing it. Now Japa for Japa shake is that I just want to do it. So it's like it's a stronger decision making than the other one, which is somewhat passive. Okay, so why do people Japa? Anyway, I think I might be representing Japa with immigration or sorry, emigration once in a while. So it's still essentially the same thing. Okay, so yes, as I mentioned before, to seek greener pastures, to escape political persecution, to escape insecurity, to seek a better standard of living, to seek better opportunities for one's progeny. So a number of people, when you interact with them, will tell them, yes, they are not jackpotting because for themselves, but they have looked at it and they realize that their own children may not be able to uh, realize their own potential. The opportunities that is available in the country may not allow their own progeny to realize their potential. So they will go outside the country so that they can have those kids might have a better life. Of course, for occupational reasons, which I alluded to earlier, and sometimes, of course, people japa to seek healthcare services not available in one's own country, especially for chronic health illnesses like cancers, as the case may be. So, general effects of japa. One of the things that happens is that there's separation of whoever is japaing from the family. Of course, if the person has already formed his or her own nuclear family, there might be dislocation and translocation of the family. Dislocation happens when one member of the family is involved. Maybe the father travels or the mother travels. Okay, so that one part of the family is outside the country, the other part is still within. Translocation means the whole family moves together. But an important phenomenon that happens, especially if one has not been a frequent traveler and has not been experiencing other cultures before, is the phenomenon of culture shock syndrome. In culture shock syndrome, this arises if or when people move to a completely new environment and they may find it very difficult to cope. Okay, so one suddenly realizes that things are done differently, and one may feel completely isolated and aloof. You just come out and you just don't know your right from your left. But this culture shock syndrome is usually easier on children compared to adults because adults are already set in their ways, so it's a difficult learning experience for them. However, children are still growing, they're still learning, so they find it a little bit easier to adapt. And of course, one of the things that are different is maybe the language, the food, even the religious practices. Because as Muslims, for example, you just realize all of a sudden that you are tens of kilometers from the nearest mosque. That can be an issue for you to contend with, definitely. If you have to go to for Juma prayer, you may find out that it's just almost impossible. You know, I personally have experienced that once when I traveled to the United States, and there's just no mosque anywhere in sight. And to get to for Juma prayer, you have to really like plan for it and travel and make that journey. So as in contrast to what you find, at home, where is most often than not, it's just a walking distance to a Juma mosque. How much more uh, other, regular masjids that are present we are close to you. So,
is used for the two is
sorry?
the hybrid system between now the points.
Sorry, someone, am I being told something? Okay.
No, go ahead. I've muted the person. Sorry.
Oh, okay. All right. So, culture shock, like I was saying, is the experience of not knowing what is going on in the new culture and finding that normal ways to adapt don't necessarily work in the new environment. Okay. We are used to maybe just, for example, you come out of your compound, you see your neighbor, hello, hi, you ask about the kids and all of that. Then you find out you get to another country and you have absolutely no idea who the person, even in the next flat, is. Everybody just mind their own business. That can be very unsettling for someone experiencing it for the first time. So this culture shock syndrome can lead to depression, withdrawal, fatigue, and feeling of isolation. So most immigrants go through a culture shock stage, but do not necessarily feel depressed. Yes, of course, people, if one has been psychologically prepared that, look, I am moving out, it is easier because you know that you're going to be expecting something strange out there which you are ready to adapt to. But for those who just do it for doing its sake, they may just be accosted with a reality check and like, oh, what's happening here? And of course, they may start missing home and feel the need to even return home, as the case may be. So still on continuing with the psychological impact of Japa, the stress of move an adjustment to the new country can lead to anxiety and depression and other psychological problems. You know, you've just got into a new environment. You know, you are completely alien to their culture, to their norms. That in itself, how am I going to adjust? Okay, you get to the workplace, you don't know what to do. That is if you have even gotten a job. But if you even go without a job and you are you're fast running out of cash, and they're wondering, by the time I run out of my cash reserve, what next? What am I going to do? So all these factors are anxiety provoking scenarios that can make people develop anxiety problems even when they do not have it before going. Okay, so sometimes people who emigrate find that the problems with coping with the loss of family and friends and the realization that their loved ones are devastated by their move. If you move in isolation, you may realize that you've created a vacuum within your family, and especially your parents, mothers particularly, will miss you and all that. So, and this might be an issue for you too. Okay, so of course, this needs can lead to feeling of guilt. You start feeling guilty. Is it really worth it? Is it not? And if you brood too much on that, it can make one lapse into a state of depression. So it's usually good to resolve that conflict even before you leave, before it becomes a problem when you arrive to your destination. Another problem that might be faced by people who japa is the problem of xenophobia. Okay, you can know that most of us will be aware of what was happening in South Africa. This is within even Africa. We are all blacks, but then xenophobia essentially is the fear of foreigners. You know, in your midst. So people find they may see you as a threat to them. You are coming to take their job. You are coming, to take the other. Use up the amenities in their society. Where they are failing and you are succeeding, they now see you as a threat, and it can lead them to start plotting ways to harm you. Okay, so of course, discrimination is also another problem that may arise that the immigrants can experience in their new location. Okay, so many immigrants are discriminated against in terms of employment. Of course, people they would prefer to employ people who are residents as against you that are just a foreigner coming into their midst. In neighborhoods, people may not want to live or share facilities with you because you're a stranger. They don't know who you are. It may take some time for you to be able to break that barrier. Of course, you may find it difficult in certain societies to even get your kids to school. It may be as a result of differences in language, differences in skin color, which we know people still experience today. Okay, and of course, maybe a problem of income. What you have, the money you have, is not enough for you to be able to put your children in the schools that are available where you are. So that may be a major issue too. And also, stereotyping is a major thing that people who Japa will experience. For example, as a Nigerian, if you're traveling to the United States, you might find out that while other citizens or citizens from other countries are being handled and let go, you as a Nigerian might be separated right from the airport. You know, that feeling of being stereotyped that, oh, Nigerians are of bad character and all of that, you experience it even though you are going with pristine, clean intentions. I personally have experienced it not once, not twice, but then I was prepared for it, so I didn't really worry myself. But then these are the things that might be a source of stress for someone who is emigrating and maybe going to a new environment for the first time. Okay, so these psychological stressors can affect the immigrant's mental health and the utilization of mental health services. Okay, so of course, the stress of movement, the stress of discrimination, of xenophobia, all of these are recognized in mental health as psychological stressors, and people can dissipate in very different, can come down with different disorders, psychological disorders as a result of this. Okay, so other problems that may lead to stressors include poverty because your resources might be limited. So, and if you are not getting support from home, one might become destitute in a new environment, and that's the major problem. Okay, so here I have a lack of reception by the mainstream society. Yes, you are trying your best to adapt, to integrate, but still people are still a little bit anxious, to relate with you freely. That puts you on edge too. So limited networks of social support and opportunities. The feeling of isolation that comes with finding yourself alone in a strange environment, you cannot fathom it. It's when you experience it that you actually know that, oh, what is this? You will find yourself, you can be working for hours, and there's just nobody that will look at you, or there's nobody you can say, okay, relate to, or you just feel like, okay, now I'm a loner. Even though there are people around you, but you feel very isolated. I have personally experienced that, so it's not really funny. These are the kind of things that the compensation is that, okay, well, I only have a few weeks to spend here and I'm back home. So that keeps you going. How much more if that is supposed to be your new life? So you know that uh, uh, it's an uphill task that one will have to deal with. Okay, so of course there might be policies that restrict your access to facilities, you know, to the infrastructures in that environment. Maybe especially if one is not already a legal immigrant, you don't have your papers, you don't have the permits, to residency permits and all of that. It might be very difficult for you to access some of these facilities that might have impact on your own health. Okay, and of course, traumatic experiences, exactly. So these are like the final part of the psychological impact that I'm going to be mentioning. Traumatic experiences may determine how you are able to cope in your host country. And this traumatic experience might have resulted even before you left your own country. For example, people who emigrate because they are victims of terrorism, for example. Okay, maybe a family member was kidnapped and maybe even killed and they had to leave, or they are out of the act of banditry, they lost a lot of property and all of that. So they are still dealing with that, and they now find themselves in a new environment, not knowing their left from their right, and that in itself uh, can be a major stressor that will culminate in
Committee,
developing
good afternoon.
mental problems. Okay, so of course, some people who emigrate, they may suffer trauma while in the host country, because the safety nets available to them might not be wide, and they may just find themselves caught up. Maybe people identify them, okay, this one is a foreigner. They may be, their property might be stolen. They may lose money, and then that puts them in a state of quandary. Okay, and of course, other issues that may be traumatic may include maybe substandard living conditions. You may see people 8, 10 in a room. Just to cut costs, some of them have to eat the feed from the goodwill of others because they are unemployed, you know, inadequate support, you are alone, no family members, nobody to support you financially. And of course, every other person looks at you suspiciously. If there's any crime, you may be wrongfully accused, and you may not have a way of getting yourself out of such. So these are the issues that may arise for newcomers into a new country. Okay. So the next slide essentially talks about, more or less just annotates the point I have just mentioned. The important one is that undocumented immigrant children and youth are frequently subject to uh, some level of trauma because they may be separated from their family. I think sometime during the time of Donald Trump in the United States, you realize that, okay, some immigrant families are coming into the country, and for whatever reason, the children might be separated from their parents. And that, of course, can lead to a major psychological problem in the children as well as their parents too. Okay. So, and of course, it may be difficult for them to even reconcile for, for, for months or even years to come. So those are other traumatic experiences that people who are emigrating may need to contend with. All right. So now the how do we mitigate the negative impact of JAPA? One of the things that have been known to be helpful is when one is financially prepared. You are financially and psychologically prepared. You have gathered enough information about your target location, I mean, where you are planning to go. uh, Thank God, in the age of internet now, a lot of information is available online. So you already psychologically and financially prepared for where you're going to go. In my own experience, I can say it actually did help me some 12 years ago when I was going for a course. I could actually use Google Maps to see the place I was going to. If I went through the street, and by the time I got there, it was I didn't need to ask many questions to locate where I was going to. So the use of technology can be very, very helpful. It may be helpful also to have to identify a community where one plans to to start off from. Okay, if you identify a Muslim community, it may be a community of people that is from the same location as yourself. They are likely to be more helpful in providing accommodation and some financial relief for you until you get your foot on the ground. All right. So then again, it is better if you do not have to travel in isolation. If you're going to go move with your family, that is probably best, because that way you are not facing anxiety of what are my children living on at home. I've not been able to send them money, how are they surviving, and things like that. So if the whole family is moved as a unit and arrive in the destination as a unit, it definitely serves to release or remove the stress that can arise from the emigration. Okay, so the issue of uh, meeting up with people with similar faith, for example, as I mentioned earlier, if you move, if you find, if you are able to identify, like, okay, here we have a high number of Muslims, we have masjids here and there, then you will, I think it will be a better place for you to want to start off, because there you have a community setting where people who have shared the same faith with you and can also help you and give you directions. That, okay, this is how we survive, this is how we cope when we came in, so you'll be able to learn faster and adjust faster. And of course, it's also very important that when you start feeling desolate, isolated, having problems to sleep, it is always good to share with somebody, all right? Because the fact that you are even sharing and discussing your issues, your mental health issues, helps to even bring a lot of relief. In mental health, we call it catharsis. It's like emotional release. Yes, because by the time you keep it within yourself, then that's when it propagates and can lead to other more severe mental health conditions. So, well, I think I would like to just stop here. While inshallah, I believe I may have been able to stimulate some thinking around this topic amongst us. Then, if there are questions, deliberately have not decided to start talking about depression, anxiety disorders, and PTSDs in as in because the topic is not about them. But then, if there are anything relating to any of these things that any of us may want to clarify, rest assured I'm here to be able to do that. So at this point, I'd like to say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakumullahu khairan.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. We'll be taking questions after our second speaker has spoken. So we would like for you to please wait on the call till he's done. Then we'll take all the
Okay.
questions together. For our second speaker for today, talking on the same topic, his name is Andem Duke. He's a psychiatric epidemiologist. He was born and raised in New York and is of Efik and Kwa descent. Um, we are pleased to welcome you for our program today, Andem Duke. Andem Duke.
Right. How's everybody doing?
Doing fine, thank you.
You guys can hear me? All right. First of all,
Yeah, we can hear you. Fine, thank you.
I'd like to ask a favor. I'd like to ask everybody, if you don't mind, to please turn on your cameras briefly, and then you can turn it off afterward. But I just sort of like to see, the room's been dark since we started. I haven't even seen one face, so it'll make me feel a little better if at least I see, who the attendees are. All right, I appreciate it. Very good, very good. And you can leave your cameras on. You feel free to leave your cameras on if you'd like to. All right, good to see you,
Hi.
Dr. Banire. How you
Yeah,
doing?
good to see you.
Billy Kiss is a
Good.
colleague of mine, and I'd like to thank you very much for having invited me to this program to speak. I'm actually very, very honored. Well, first of all, I want to say something about myself. My own experience is unique because, sorry, give me 1 second. I am a psychiatric epidemiologist. I'm also trained in general internal medicine. And, Billikis and I, we work together. But my experience is unique in the sense that I am American. So I was my talk is going to be a little more, it's going to be formal, but it's also going to be a lot more informal. I didn't have slides like the previous speaker. What is your name? Sorry, I can't say the first name. How do you say your first name? Ito. The first speaker's first name. Hello? Oh, can somebody help me with the first speaker's first name?
Dr. Itopa Garba.
Itopa Garba. Okay, Itopa Garba. Yeah, what Itopa had said, and I actually really, he touched on a lot of points. I'm sort of going to expand on those points a little bit, but I'm also going to give a different angle, from those points. So I do commend him for coming with slides, right? So first of all, my experience is unique because I am American. As a matter of fact, I'm actually way more. I'm Nigerian by blood, but I'm American to the core. You only got to spend 5 minutes with me and realize that, I'm a New Yorker to the core, born and raised in New York, from Brooklyn. But my experience is unique in the sense that my parents, my father migrated, Dr. Andem Duke, and I'm Dr. Andem Duke Jr. My father migrated to the United States in 1970, and my mother, joined them a year later. So the question of migration, it's not necessarily a new thing. So this concept of Japa, and Billikis always gets a laugh when I try to pronounce the word, Japa, Japa. This whole concept, it's not a new concept. It's been going on for a long, long time. For example, as a matter of fact, there is an article here that was authored by it's called Old Calabar Merchants in the Offshore British Community, 1650 to 1750. All right. And then so it's not necessarily new. I mean, now with social media, it's really it's really sort of it's blown up, but it's not necessarily new. And you had the first president of Nigeria, Nnamdi Azikiwe. He migrated. He actually studied in the United States. He lived in the United States. You had Barack Obama Sr. You had Dilibe Onyema, who wrote a book called Nigger and Eaton back in the 1980s. He talked about his experience living in the United Kingdom. And then you have Hogan Kidbasi as well. And you've got my parents, and you've got so many others who've been migrating to, England, the United States, for so many years. Australia, Nigerians are everywhere. Now, Canada's gone, into the picture a lot more lately, but you even have my uncle, who's a cardiologist in the United States, who migrated to, he actually studied in Canada, trained in Canada in the 1980s. So this is not necessarily new. All right, so why is my experience unique? My experience is unique because I'm American, but I also have Nigerian blood, so you can consider me maybe like I'm Nigerian American. So, but I'm Nigerian American not in the sense that I came here maybe 5 years ago, or I came, here 10 years ago. I'm Nigerian American because of my parents. But it puts me in a unique position because on one angle, you have the American perspective, but on the other angle, you also have the African perspective or the Nigerian perspective. And then you have somewhere in the middle where there could be an identity crisis because where do you really fit in? So this topic, I think, is very, very important in the sense that when you migrate to a foreign country, for me, my experience is mostly based in the United States and Canada, and also I'd say England. I go to England all the time. I've got relatives in England, and I know Europe, Germany, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the things you will find out in the United States is that Nigerian Americans are the model minority. So Nigerian Americans, if you didn't know, are actually the most educated group in the United States. So Nigerian Americans, have, in fact, having a graduate degree in the Nigerian American community is actually a given, and even having an undergraduate degree, while in the American population or in the Canadian population, for example, the status quo is a lot of people have a high school diploma. For example, I come from an upper middle class family. My father is a doctor. My mother, you know, is my mother has a master's degree. So my brother's a computer engineer. My sister's also two of my other sisters are very educated. My sister's a journalist. A lot of you probably know my sister, my younger sister, but I'm not going to mention her for the sake of privacy. And then including myself. So having higher degrees among Nigerians, Americans is mostly a given. But there's also a catch-22 about that. There is a catch-22 about that in the sense that, most Nigerians migrating to the United States or to Canada, they sort of assume that what they see on television is, typifies America to the core or Canada to the core. I had a cousin who moved from Nigeria, and he said, you know what? I used to watch Hollywood. I used to watch television in Nigeria, and I thought the streets in America were made of gold. Fortunately, he's doing fine right now. So in America, you will see poverty. In Canada, you will see poverty. Yesterday, I was with a Nigerian colleague who's just migrated from Jos, and he was like, I'm seeing homeless people begging, and we were standing like right around the corner from us. There were people begging. And I told him, I said, here we call them panhandlers. That's what we call them, and he was like, wow, this is just like Nigeria. I said, well, welcome to Canada. You're going to see people living in tents. You're going to see, homeless people. You're going to see a lot of things that, might shock you because you'll say, this isn't what I saw. You go to London, England, you see the same thing. You see people sleeping on the subway. You see people living off of the trash cans or garbage cans. You go to Paris, France, you see a lot of these things. All right. So, as Itopa had said, and sorry if I bought your, I don't mean to botch your name. There is.
Don't worry, you're excused.
Yeah, I appreciate it. There is a culture shock where you come here, and when you come here, you'll see that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you were president of, Senate president, I have relatives who are former governors who come here to the United States, and some were senators, and when they come here, you take the bus. You know what I mean? My father, who was very accomplished, in Nigeria, we're actually well-to-do in the United States as well, fortunately, but he still cooks by himself. You know what I mean? So there's really, a lot of I have uncles in Nigeria who I went to Nigeria, visited Nigeria 2 years ago. I have uncles who they don't even know how to, they don't even know how to maybe, I'm probably exaggerating a little bit, but they can't even maybe, boil rice or maybe they just know how to make an egg, but here President Biden, when he was in the Senate, he was taking the subway every way to work. I bumped into him a few times on Amtrak. You have senators, they don't necessarily have drivers or chauffeurs. So you don't have a washerman. I mean, yes, you have laundry machines, but when I go to Nigeria or like I visited 2 years ago, my life it was very different because my parents have this huge mansion in Calabar and security guards and, cooks, butlers and, drivers, which a lot of us can sort of relate to. But here, that is actually very, very foreign. So you have Nigerians who come here and sometimes they find it hard to cope because, they're not used to they're used to people doing things for themselves. So I just want to give you, in advance notice, if you're thinking of migrating, to the West or to a foreign country, probably start taking cooking classes. Take cooking classes. At least learn the basics. You know what I mean? Maybe learn how to make ramen noodles. So I'm going to touch a little bit on some of the things Itopa covered. So another thing, in Nigeria, there's this whole thing, Alhaji, engineer, doctor, barrister, barista or whatever, barrister, Senate. Somebody was in the Senate, 20 years ago, but they still call them senator. Like, my distant aunt, Florence Ita Giwa when she comes. She's not a senator anymore, but she still goes by senator. Here it's not the concept. It's on a first name basis, and you can call me Andem or you can call me Andy. You know what I mean? We go by first names. So the whole classist thing about, titles. You know what I mean? Nigerians like titles a lot. Alhaji, engineer, doctor, chief. It's not something that's very common here. You call Joe Biden Joe. You work with Barack Obama. You work with Donald Trump. You call him Donald. I mean, you can call him Mr. President just out of respect, but it's mostly on a first name basis. So, going into this whole thing about stereotyping, at the end of the day, when you come here, you will realize that, stereotypes still exist. So it doesn't matter how educated you might have been, or you may be, that you'll notice that, microaggressions exist everywhere. Microaggressions exist in the workplace. And if somebody doesn't understand what the meaning of microaggression is, we can delve into that a little further. So things that maybe you could do probably say in Nigeria, for example, you can't necessarily say here, or things that people may not. In Nigeria, it's a much more collectivist society, but here it's a much more individualistic society. And now it is true that, okay, maybe your neighbors may not necessarily as friendly, but that is relative. For example, as a New Yorker, I'm more chatty, I'm much more extroverted. But if you go to certain other parts of the United States or Canada, people may not necessarily be as extroverted as I am. They may so that's sort of relative. But what you'll generally see, though, it's much more individualistic. My parents' tenants in Calabar or in Lagos, they can knock on the door and say, hey, give me can I get some salt? Can I get some palm oil or whatever? But here it's much more individualistic. So, I mean, we do have food banks. So it's not as cohesive. You don't have as much more cohesion as you have, in Nigeria, for example. And for example, what I may be comfortable with sharing with Billy Kiss, because she kind of understands me and I kind of understand her. Here, you may not have that same degree of empathy. So another thing that you will see here, you will see that, Itopa talked about catharsis. The catharsis is important. Yes, catharsis is good, is great. But at the same time, catharsis comes with a catch-22, meaning here you have to be careful who you share your secrets with. In Nigeria, you could stop and just talk to the person on the street, selling suya. You could tell them what your problems are. But here you want to be a lot more circumspect, because people tend to be much more fair weather friends. And as a matter of fact, there's a Canadian clothing brand called Fairweather. And I always think about it. I said, because here in the society we live in, it's much more fair weather. So one thing about growing up in an upper middle class family is, I talked about that identity crisis, and a lot of Nigerians who come also have that identity crisis. Now, mine's a little different because I'm American. I don't have an accent. But here you're going to find out people, because I fit in as soon as where America is arguably the greatest country in the world. So there's always that notion, oh, he's American, you know what I mean? So they may not necessarily talk down on me, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, there's still subtle biases where people may not talk down about you to your face, but they have stereotypes about you. At the bottom line is black is black. So you want to be cognizant of that. A lot of Nigerians who come here, they end up being in a bubble. And what you find is that a lot of times Nigerians, even Nigerians that I know, Nigerian Americans that I know, and Nigerian Canadians, they stay in a shell. They've disconnected from the African and Nigerian community. Why? Because they stab each other in the back. But that's a bad thing. Nigerians should actually stay together, bond with each other, because at the end of the day, we're going to have one another. Now I'm not, I try to be as politically correct as much as possible. As a New Yorker, I'm also a straight shooter. I say it the way it is. The bottom line is, at the end of the day, when you come here, no matter how many degrees you have, no matter how qualified you are, the people who will bail you out, if you're in a problem, the people who will really be there to support you will be people from the Black community. So look for Black networks, you know what I mean? I'm not saying you shouldn't have white friends. I'm not saying you shouldn't have, like, for example, I grew up in a much more, because here, just like you have classism in Africa, you've got classism here. I was fortunate, I went to private schools. For me, it's never been a problem being the only Black person in a setting. As a matter of fact, Nigeria was atypical for me because I had never really seen that many Black people in one setting. As I saw in Nigeria, it was sort of atypical for me being in Nigeria because I'm used to being maybe the only Black person is in a setting. So, but a lot of Nigerians come here with a concept and, they don't integrate with even African Americans. And there's a term that they use in Nigerians, say akata or whatever. That's wrong. African Americans will be the ones who will support you. Black Canadians will be the ones who will support you at the end of the day. So don't stereotype African Canadians, don't stereotype African Americans, don't call them slaves because they have a story. You know what I mean? Don't feel like you're better than them. Integrate with them because at the end of the day, when you have a problem, Billy Keys will always have my back. I can guarantee you that, Dr. Benir, he will always have my back. But you know what? A lot of the other people, they only love you when things are good, but when things are bad, they'll throw you under the bus. So that's very, very important. Look for Black networks, and I have some resources that I'm going to share after this. How are we doing with time? Yeah, I'm going to round up very soon.
Thank you
How
so
much?
much.
How much more minutes do we have?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay. All right. So, and then I also want to go into something very quickly. uh don't physically fight people. Use the justice system. If you want have a problem, don't argue with people. Use the justice system, document things properly, have things in writing, because at the end of the day, here, if you throw punches, you can go to jail. A lot of Nigerians who come here, they end up also having problems. They get into scams. Like, for example, there was a case again of last week in the United States. It happened. Medicare fraud. Nigerians get into Medicare fraud. Do things legally. Do everything legally as much as possible. You know what I mean? Don't do illegal stuff. The whole 419 thing, it started in Nigeria. Nigerians have a bad rep today when they hold the green passport, partly because of 419. But that Nigerians are already the model minority, so don't feel embarrassed, even if you're stopped at the airport, and somebody questions you, you know, don't go low. You know what I mean? When they attack you or whatever, be civil, no matter what. Always be civil in what you do. And lastly, I'm going to round up with one more thing that I want to say very quickly. Uh, Corruption is everywhere. I noticed it in Germany. I know I've seen it in the UK. If you go to the Nigerian embassy here in like in the United States, I've heard that. Yeah, I took my mom to the Nigerian embassy one time, and I was surprised, how disorganized it was. When I went to the Nigerian consulate in London and in Germany, there was still a lot of corruption. So Nigerians that are coming here, what you need to try to do is change the system, change the stereotype, by being the best in everything you do. You know, I was shocked to see that people were asking for bribes in some consulates, in other parts of the world where I traveled to Nigerian consulates. So that paints a bad picture of Nigeria, so we can do better. So I just want to thank you again. And I think that anything else, I guess you can ask me any questions you have, feel free to ask me. There are a lot of resources that I have, like African Canadian Network, Nigerian American citizens, and some other resources that I'll be happy to share with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much for that showcase. I mean, throughout the speech, I was so ingrained in it that even the moderator did not notice how much time he had spent. So thank you so much for that presentation. I really appreciate it. So this is the question and answer session. So if you have a question, kindly drop it in the chat box or unmute yourself and say the question. We'll be taking only 5 questions. So if you have a question, you can just unmute yourself and say it or drop it in the chat box. While we are waiting for the question regarding the networks that you said you share with us, would I know a lot of us here have people that have gone, or some of us here we are also new there. Would really love if you could share with us. Like I said,
Well, yeah, I will send those resources over, and I have a lot of them. Yeah, I'll certainly send them over. What's the best way to send them across?
you can send it to Dr. Balikis. She would send it back to
Okay.
us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question, but before I ask my question, I'd like to say thank you very much to the two speakers and for honoring this event. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you, and thank you very much on them. My question is that specifically goes to Andem. Like when I got to Canada, I had a colleague telling me that there's a particular period of the year that you just feel sad. I don't even know the reason. So does that mean that the circumstances we face in Nigeria or perhaps in a particular country differs from another country in terms of mental well-being? So what are the things that you think can be responsible for being sad at a particular period of time in the year?
Yeah, well,
Thank you
okay.
very much.
You're welcome. So seasonal affective disorder is common. So the weather changes are, especially like during fall. So we're in August the 24th. So in about a month from now, we're going to get into fall, and we're going to, after that, it's going to be winter. So we tend to have longer nights and shorter days. So your mood can be affected because you're spending a lot more time indoors. And now it's not a given that everyone's necessarily going to have seasonal affective disorder, but it's very likely or can have a formal diagnosis of seasonal affective disorder. But the bottom line is that your moods will definitely change. I mean, if you're so used to in Nigeria, for example, or in a warmer climate, spending a lot of time outside, you're spending a lot of time indoors. You can't just like, even when you want to go just want to take your garbage outside, trash outside, or you want to run across the street, you got to be bundled up. So these are things that could all affect your mood. So I guess the best way to handle seasonal or those changes in weather might just be to just stay active and get a lot of sunlight as much as possible, and then use a lot of bright lights as well. Bright lighting helps a lot, illumination and exercise, and then nutrition. Eat well. Just take care of yourself and be optimistic about life. Try not to Isolation is very common here as well, like we both talked about. But again, it's not a given. So do something, listen to the radio, watch a movie, read a book or whatever. Don't fall the victim to over pathology, pathologization is a problem here too. People get diagnoses all the time, which people may gloss over in Africa, but sometimes it's true, sometimes it's an exaggeration, but it does happen. So it's being optimistic, staying healthy, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I'm still receiving questions. If anyone has any questions.
Hello, maybe I can come in here and ask a question to Dr. Andem.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Exactly. Yes, I'm impressed. You being a psychiatric epidemiologist, incidentally, I also have a master's in field epidemiology, actually. So it's I know that we'll probably be thinking alike and stuff like that. So, but then, did you have to do a residency in psychiatry before majoring in psychiatric epidemiology, or how did you? I mean, how is that,
Well, the different
Dr.
pathways
Andem?
the different thank you. And you can call me Andem. The different pathways to,
Okay, no problem.
yes, I just call me, the different pathways to being a psychiatric epidemiologist. So you don't necessarily have to do a residency. I'm currently actually still in training in psychiatry. But
Okay.
by virtue of my experience, by virtue of a lot of what I've done, you know what I mean, I'm qualified as a psychiatric epidemiologist. So a lot of my work has heavily, you know, slanted toward that direction. So you can have formal training, which I do have,
Yeah.
but you could
Yeah.
also follow a much more informal pathway as well.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, by publishing more in the area, by joining
Mhm.
epidemiological societies, you know, bodies, organizations, etc. I'm a fellow of the American College. So
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
thank
That's
you.
good. Yeah. Thanks for
Yeah,
the insight.
welcome. I wanted to,
Thank you.
sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
don't worry, you can.
Okay, sorry, because I wanted to say something too about, you know, this ADHD is another you know, thing that's very common here. You know, going into the whole thing about a lot of things are over pathologized, meaning, you know, and like you know, being an African parent, you could also, African parents sometimes may not see it as a problem, but here it may be seen as a problem, you know. So the coping strategies, Nigerians generally have these coping skills, you know, and sometimes they don't, which is on the good side. They may not take things for granted, but children that are born here, you know, may, you know, but it's always good to, you know, I think balance is important at the end of the day. Yeah. So some Nigerian values are still very important. Nigerian culture is important. So I think don't, no matter what, don't cut away from that culture. Yeah. Stay connected to the culture. Yeah. Do Nigerians discriminate amongst, sorry. Thank you. Did somebody have a question?
Yes, in the comment section, in the
Oh,
chat section.
was that to me or to somebody else?
So both of you. So you can answer first, then the other speaker will take.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll keep it brief. Nigerians do discriminate against themselves. As I said, Nigerians discriminate against other Africans. Nigerians discriminate against African Americans, which is very sad. I don't, you know, please don't use that term akata. It's derogatory. You know, if somebody uses it, don't use it. Nigerians discriminate among themselves. You see, like AFIC society, Igbo society, which is great, but he's not Igbo, he's not AFIC or whatever. She's not AFIC. I mean, I understand, but at the same time, I think Nigerians should connect with each other, love one another. You know, harmony is really important because at the end of the day, as I said before, let me go back to is it widely? I mean, I think it's not really to the extent that it's being practiced in Nigeria because of the societal structure here. You know, some things that you can get away with in Nigeria, you can't necessarily get away with here because the justice system is more structured, but it's still there, you know, it's still there. So, but I think that it's just good to not be a part of that, you know, do your best to eliminate that, you know, that practice. So it does happen. Yes, it does happen. But there's also that camaraderie factor that, you know, maybe Nigerians might see each other and they just automatically bond with each other. You know, for me, I'm American, so they don't know unless, like I say, oh, I've eaten jollof rice, I know how to make a goosey, you know, and they're like, oh, are you Nigerian? So it's different for me, but I've seen that, you know, a lot of my other Nigerian friends or cousins, they face discrimination among Nigerians, but that shouldn't be the case. Thank you.
Can our second speaker also answer the question? And maybe can also talk about how
Yes.
one can approach these kind of situations.
Okay. Well, I think Andem has essentially touched on the important aspect of that question because the question is relating to Nigerians outside the country discriminating among themselves. You know, like they are bringing about, I mean, reflecting things they do back here at home and taking it out there and still continuing it. And that's not okay because while you're out there, you actually need that sense of cohesion, irrespective of what your tribe is what your religious denomination is. You can hear from Andem telling us about the fact that the best group of people or the most likely group of people you're likely to get help from are the blacks there. So if you discriminate among yourself, you're limiting, you're reducing your social capital, because the people around you who are able to help you out are essentially your social capital. So if you fracture that bonding that being out there can help you guys create to assist one another, then of course you guys will be giving yourself the short end of the stick. So I think when you're outside, forget all the discriminations and divisions that you have back here at home, and form a cohesive community there for everybody's benefit. I think that's what I can add to what you have said. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that response. Your response is highly appreciated. And with that, we come to the end of today's program. Before we finally close the program, we would like to ask the president of Las Omega to give his vote of thanks for the program.
I didn't get your closing remark.
We want to call on the president of the association to give us a vote of thanks.
Yeah,
and
I think there are some
okay.
hands up. There are some hands up.
Okay.
And I just
We'll
want to
take
add, if,
just. All
yeah,
right.
I'm open to take some more questions if somebody wants to ask questions. Yeah, I understand. I know you're cognizant of the time, but I'm here for you.
All right. So we'll just take some more questions since we
Yeah.
have two people raising up. Cousin Milori, you can go first.
Assalamu alaikum salam.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Yeah, I just need to ask this question because it's been a major issues migrants have had, and which could also affect those that are planning to japa. So it's something that I think we should address, and which is two major issues that could affect people as in migrants and people that are planning to migrate. When they come into the country, probably the US or the UK, they have issues in the first 1 year, major issues, which is probably the financial situation, right? And also when they come in newly, they are not prepared, and they sometimes they have this believe that they could get a job as fast as possible, probably within the first 1 or 2 weeks. It's not always like that. So, so what do we need to? How do we need to reorientate them, or give them that kind of orientation that when you get when you jackpot, the grass is not always green. You need to prepare yourself from home, whichever way, what needs to be done before you come, before you migrate, so that when you get to a new environment, things are different, the culture is different, situation could be different, and you tend to start again, and it won't be easy. So how do they manage so that they have mental health stability? Because when they have this financial issue, it tends to affect them. They start having emotional and psychological trauma, which could affect them a lot. And also the secondly is the issue of
Sorry, could you summarize your question? Like, it's a little bit, it's very, very long.
and the issue of culture. When they move to a new country, the culture they need to have an orientation of how the culture is and be able to adjust. So the question is how these two aspects, how can they be able to adjust and be able to have a soft landing in the new country. Yeah.
And who's the question directed to?
Any of the lecturers could could answer the questions.
Well, okay. Well, I think that, there's really no one set rule. I think everyone's different, but a good way to cope would be to, as I said, maybe read about the culture, study the culture, have some substantive savings when you come, and also, try not to live too large. You know what I mean? Over time, things are gonna be fine, but it may take some adjustment. One of my colleague who just moved here, he said, "Oh, when I lived in Abuja, I lived in this huge house, and here now I have to live in this little, one bedroom, or so it takes an adjustment, but it's all circumstantial, because I mean, you're coming for a reason, maybe greener pastures. There's also voluntary and involuntary. For those that are coming in voluntarily, it might be a little harder, like coming maybe because they're displaced, like individually displaced people, or refugees, for example. But I think that just taking it one day at a time, it's so easy to get overwhelmed by the pace of life here. The pace might be faster, but just take it one day at a time, and then, seek for the good networks. Maybe you could join a community, like here you have Association for New Canadians, for example, and then in the United States you've got something similar, and other like Black networks and so on. Even it doesn't even have to be all Black as well. It could be a mixed network for immigrants as a whole. Thank you.
Right. Can we have the next question? And I so much like it. Let me get your question.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Itopa. Thank you, Handy, for honestly, I really enjoyed this session, and I mean, it was really interesting. I've been in the UK maybe several years back, and one of the major challenges I had that made me say, "Oh, I need to get back to Nigeria." Actually, use environment was the weather condition. So our young folks to face that when they get there. I always have that scenario of my mouth shaking all the time, and of course, I will have all the layers of all the put on, but I just couldn't cope. So I want Dr. Ito, psychologist stress of the word Andy. I mean, she talked about the position. Out there you don't get to, it doesn't really matter your profession. You could get a white collar job or otherwise, and everybody lives. There's no classes in terms of, okay, I have a master's degree, so I had that challenge. I was running a master's, and I had to go and do a side hustle, and I was being controlled by people that didn't even have a high school degree. So I felt, oh no, I need to get back to my country. So that's not really so good, but I think maybe Andy can take us around that, and that will be helpful for those that want to really do the jackpot. Thank you.
Sure. Well, I think it has more to do with, looking at the big picture and then seeing it more as, so always keeping the future in perspective. For example, when my father, when he migrated to the United States in 1970, just after high school, and then he worked in the bank briefly as a teller, and he saved, and he had to do a lot of odd jobs, you know what I mean, work double jobs, but over time, you end up, if you just, I think it's important taking one at a time. That's a problem a lot of Nigerians have too, because they can't cope and they end up doing illegal things. They want to drive flashy cars. They want to, when you go to a party, you don't have to spray money. I mean, maybe spray a little bit money, maybe, but you don't have to. A certain lady in the States, the feds started following her because she was spraying money in parties, and they discovered she was doing illegal things, and now she's got a jail sentence. She's in jail, actually. She's in prison. I don't know if she's been released, but I think the important thing there is, yes, that will happen. That will happen. But I think looking at the big picture is always at the back of my mind, no matter what, in a conflict situation, what's the worst that can happen, as long as, you look at, okay, 5 years down the road, this is not necessarily going to be the case. One thing I like about America, America is, again, I may be biased because I'm American, is a land of opportunities. You know what I mean? You may be in that position today, but 10 years later, you could be president of the United States. You could be a senator. You could be a mayor of a city. You could be anything you want. And it's your children, come into the system, and it's like a promised land of some sort. So, yeah, so just keep an open mind and don't necessarily take it very personal. I've learned from my parents to pick your battles, choose your battles wisely. Yes, they may be talking down on you, but 5 years from now, we'll see the difference. And this whole social media thing is another, we can go on and on, Facebook, like this Nigerian, I think we know him, he was like always on Facebook flashing how much money he had, and then the jails arrested him. So just be humble, practice humility. And I'm glad this is a faith group as well. Let your faith guide you in everything you do, because you will face challenges. Sometimes you might be in the right, but people accuse you wrongly, So just look, the big picture is the code word there, the code phrase, the big picture. I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you, Andy. It really helped. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate the answers. I mean, yeah, you have been able to share a lot of insights with us, and we really, really appreciate the stuff. We have come to the end of today's program. I would like to call on the president and to just help us and give us a vote of thanks and a closing remark for the program.
Well, thank you, Abdulhamid. Give thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Lord of incomparable majesty, for making this session a success. I would like to thank Andy for taking time of your busy schedule to attend this program. Really enjoyed your lecture. It's highly informative and insightful. We appreciate that so much. I also want to thank Dr. Itopa, Garba, for also taking time out of your busy time schedule. You're always busy consulting. We appreciate you so much. You know, an household name in Las Omega. We've always been calling on you, and you've always been turning up to teach as much as you have to help us, to guide us with regards to our mental health. We thank you so much. We appreciate that, and we're not taking that for granted. I also appreciate the diaspora secretary, that's Dr. Balikis Bane, for putting this up. This is a remarkable event, and I want to believe that every member of the association, including I, enjoyed it and really gained so much from it. To all our members who have attended, thanks so much for joining this session. We promise to teach out more useful and insightful sessions like this. And to all our members that are also planning to Japa, like Dr. Andy said, the big picture, always put the big picture in mind. When you look at the big picture, you will know if it's worth it or not. And if you find that it's worth it, then you have to start preparing mentally, culturally, and build your social capital. One of the primary objectives of setting up this forum is to enhance the social network for our members that are in diaspora and those that are aspiring to be in diaspora. And that's one of the main focus of the diaspora secretary, because we've had series of stories with our members. We have some of our members that are doing extremely well, and we have some of our members that are not doing so well. In fact, lately, we lost one of our members in South Korea, and when we investigated the cause, we found that it was due to depression. completely mental depression. That was the root cause of giving up. It's a big loss for us, really. So we are trying to build a network of our diaspora members. Anywhere we have a member going in the world, I know we have one or two last maker that is there or close by. So we can always link you up to help you settle down, to support you, to ensure that you could manage the shock, the cultural shock, the mental shock, the economic shock, and whatever that comes with migration. Because migration is a very huge task, or let me say capital in one's life, because it can be a game changer towards achieving more success in life, and it can also be a game changer towards losing what one has acquired over time. For example, we've seen situation whereby we have people living in Nigeria and going to abroad, the same country, going to the same school, and we see some of them doing extremely well, and we see some of them that have to come back to Nigeria to start all over because the way it works differently. So, but when we build this network, when we relate with ourselves, like Andy advised, we go join a community that will help you, most especially the community of Nigerians, rather than going there to prognose and stab yourself at the back or try prognosing about what one has achieved and the other has not achieved. Just let's humble ourselves, let's come together and support ourselves so that we can live a communal life. And actually, this is what the faith dictates. This is what Islam is all about. Social engagement, social support, social engineering. And that's why we are here. And the same concept is what drives our association, Last Omega, to help ourselves. It's one of our vision. Wherever we have our members to help ourselves socially, economically, in a way that we are going to contribute our own to the society. So please, I want to implore our members in diaspora, let's come together, let's work together, let's support ourselves. And those that are aspiring to go to diaspora, reach out to our diaspora secretary, that's Dr. Balikis Manuel. She has the database of our members in diaspora. They can always network you to the right person that will support you to sue. I pray my time for every one of us and make this our Japa sojourn for those that are interested, a successful one. And for those of us that are still in Nigeria and loves to remain in Nigeria, the Almighty also make us to be successful. Once again, I will say thank you to Dr. Itopa. I will say thank you to Dr. Andem and everyone that have joined this session. And I'm looking forward to joining more of our sessions in the future. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh.
Thank you very
Wa
much.
alaikum salam wa barakatuh.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Thank you for attending. We have come to the end of today's program. See you next time.